Family. A word that carries so much meaning, so much weight. It's supposed to be where love, trust, and loyalty are unconditional. But sometimes, those very things are tested in ways that shatter everything you thought you knew. This is the story of me, Caroline, a woman who believed in love, in marriage, in family. I spent 25 years building a life with my husband, George, and raising our daughter, Emma, who was the light of my life. But I never anticipated that the people I loved the most would betray me in the cruelest way possible. This is my story, a story of betrayal, heartbreak, and the painful journey to reclaim my life and dignity. It all started one evening, right before dinner. I had just returned from picking Emma up from soccer practice when I noticed something strange. The door to our bedroom was ajar, and George and Lily were inside, talking in hushed tones. I couldn't hear their conversation, but the way they were standing so close to each other, the way they exchanged glances that seemed a little too intimate, it made my stomach churn. I brushed it off, telling myself that I was overthinking things. After all, Lily was family. There was no reason to suspect anything. But as the days passed, I started noticing more signs, subtle things, but enough to make me uneasy. It wasn't until a month later that everything came crashing down. I had planned a family dinner, nothing fancy, just a gathering to spend some quality time together. But when Lily walked into the kitchen, her face pale and her eyes red, I knew something was wrong. "Caroline," she said, her voice trembling, "we need to talk." I followed her into the living room, away from the dinner table that had already been set. My heart began to race as she sat down on the couch, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "What's going on, Lily? You're scaring me," I said, trying to steady my voice. She took a deep breath and then said the words that would change everything. "Caroline, I'm so sorry. I've been having an affair with George." The world seemed to tilt. My vision blurred, and for a moment, I thought I might faint. My own sister betraying me with my husband? I couldn't process it. How had this happened? Why hadn't I seen the signs? "I never meant for it to happen," Lily continued, her voice shaky. It just did, and I don't know how to fix it." I could hardly breathe. The anger, the hurt, it was overwhelming. But I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just sat there, staring at her, my heart breaking. "Why, Lily?" I managed to whisper. "Why would you do this to me? To our family?" "I don't have an answer," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry." That night, George came home late as usual. I was sitting at the kitchen table, the glow from the overhead light casting long shadows across the room. He walked in, expecting the usual, "Welcome home, how was your day?" But I couldn't bring myself to say it. Instead, I just stared at him. "Caroline, what's wrong?" he asked, his voice full of concern. But I saw through it. I could see the guilt in his eyes. "I know," I said, my voice steady, though my insides were screaming. "I know about you and Lily." He froze. His eyes widened for just a moment, then quickly masked it with a forced smile. "Caroline, I can explain." "Explain?" I repeated, standing up from the table. "You've been lying to me for months, George. This whole time, I've been living a lie, thinking we were happy, thinking our family was intact. Caroline, please. It's not what you think." I shook my head. "Then what is it, George? What is it that you've been hiding?" I don't know. It just happened. I didn't want it to happen," he stammered, but it was too late. The damage was done. "I want a divorce," I said, my voice trembling with a mix of sadness and rage. "I'm done." The next few weeks were a blur. The house felt empty, like a shell of what it once was. George moved out, and Lily moved in with a friend. Emma was devastated, of course. She couldn't understand why everything had fallen apart so suddenly, and I couldn't blame her for that. I had no answers, no explanations that could make sense of the chaos. The divorce papers were filed, and I focused on keeping everything together for Emma's sake. But inside, I was torn apart. The betrayal cut deeper than anything I had ever experienced. As time went on, I started to rebuild. I focused on my career, spending more time with Emma, and trying to find a sense of normalcy again. I filed for full custody of Emma, and although George fought it at first, in the end, he didn't have the fight left in him. I also began seeing a therapist, something I should have done much sooner. It helped me process the anger, the grief, and the feelings of betrayal. And through it all, I learned something important. I didn't need George or Lily to define me. I was strong on my own, and I could rebuild my life, no matter how hard it seemed. One day, as I was going through some old family photos, I came across a letter. It was from Lily. I hadn't spoken to her since the affair came to light, but I had hoped, deep down, that she would come to her senses and apologize. The letter was dated a few months after the affair was exposed. In it, Lily expressed regret for everything that had happened. She admitted that she had been confused, that she had let her own insecurities and emotions cloud her judgment. She apologized for betraying me and destroying our family, and she asked for forgiveness. I sat there, holding the letter, my heart aching. Could I forgive her? Could I ever trust her again? I thought long and hard about Lily's letter. Forgiveness wasn't something that came easily, especially after everything that had happened. But over time, I realized that holding on to the anger and resentment would only continue to hurt me. It was hard, but I knew I had to let go. I reached out to Lily, and we met for coffee. It was an awkward meeting at first, filled with tension and unspoken words. But as we talked, I realized that she was truly sorry. And though it would take time to heal, I knew that we could begin to rebuild our relationship piece by piece. As for George, our divorce was finalized, and we both moved on. He tried to be involved in Emma's life, but the damage was done. I was no longer the woman who would wait around for his apologies or excuses. I had learned to stand on my own 2 feet. Life didn't return to normal overnight, but with time, I found peace. Emma and I started fresh, and though there were days when I felt the weight of the past pressing on me, I knew that I had emerged stronger. Sometimes, the greatest lessons come from the hardest trials, and I had learned to trust in myself again. George and Lily had tried to destroy my family, but in the end, they had only strengthened the bond I had with my daughter. And now, as we look to the future, I knew that I would never again allow anyone to take away my power, my worth, or my peace. It was a chilly autumn morning when Sarah sat down at the kitchen table, sipping her coffee. The sunlight filtered gently through the kitchen windows, casting soft shadows on the tiles. It had been a busy week, filled with work, school events for the kids, and endless errands. Life had settled into a comfortable routine. Her husband, Alex, had been distant lately, but Sarah chalked it up to the demands of work and the stress that came with running his own business. He was always coming home late, his face tired, his eyes distracted, but Sarah had always trusted him, believing that this was just a phase, something they could get through together. That morning, as Sarah poured another cup of coffee, the doorbell rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Em, her younger sister, standing on the doorstep with a nervous smile. "Hey, sis," Em said, her voice strained. "Can we talk?" Sarah noticed the way her sister was holding herself, the tight grip on her purse, the way her eyes darted nervously to the side. Em had always been the carefree one, the life of the party. This sudden tension in her demeanor made Sarah's stomach tighten with unease. "Of course," Sarah said, trying to smile. "Come on in. I was just making coffee." Em stepped inside, her movements stiff. Sarah led her to the kitchen, trying to brush away the nagging feeling that something was off. As Em settled into a chair, Sarah offered her a plate of freshly baked cookies, a comfort they had shared for years, but Em didn't seem to notice. She simply stared at her hands in her lap, her fingers nervously tapping on the edge of the table. "What's going on, Em?" Sarah asked gently. "You seem different. Is everything okay?" Em took a deep breath, her voice trembling. Sarah, there's something I need to tell you. Something I've been holding in for months. Sarah felt a lump form in her throat. She didn't know what was coming, but she knew it wasn't good. Em finally spoke, her words tumbling out in a rush. I know this is going to hurt you, but you deserve to know the truth. Alex has been seeing someone else. It's been going on for months. Sarah's world seemed to stop. The air around her became thick, and the sounds of the kitchen faded into a distant hum. Her mind raced. Her pulse quickened. She stared at her sister, unsure if she had heard correctly. What? Number that's not possible, Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. But Em didn't look away. Her eyes were filled with guilt, regret, and something darker. It's true, Sarah. I saw them together, at the park near his office. They were holding hands, laughing like they were in love. The room spun around Sarah as the words sank in. She had always been devoted to Alex. Their marriage had been built on trust, on years of shared experiences and dreams. How could he betray her like this? How could Em, her own sister, be the one to tell her? Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes, but she held them back. She had to stay strong. For herself, for her children. I don't understand, Sarah said, her voice trembling. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I didn't know how, Em replied, her voice breaking. I didn't want to hurt you, but I can't stand by and watch him destroy you. Destroy your family. Sarah's head was spinning. Her hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the table. The betrayal was not just from Alex, but from Em, too. The person she trusted most, the person who should have been by her side, had kept this secret. Where's the proof? Sarah asked, her voice low but firm. Where's the proof that Alex has been cheating? Em hesitated for a moment before pulling out her phone, showing Sarah a picture she had taken of Alex and the other woman at a local cafe. The images were clear, undeniable. There was no mistaking the intimacy between them. The next few days were a blur for Sarah. She had no idea what to do or where to turn. Her mind was filled with thoughts of Alex, the man she had loved for over a decade, and of Em, her sister who had betrayed her trust. Finally, she decided to confront Alex. It wasn't easy, but Sarah knew she had to face the truth, no matter how painful. That evening, as they sat down to dinner, Sarah turned to Alex, her heart pounding in her chest. We need to talk. Alex looked up, his face pale. He had been avoiding her gaze for weeks, but tonight there was no escape. About what? He asked, his voice defensive. I know about you and her, Sarah said, her voice steady, though her insides were unraveling. I know about the affair. Alex froze. For a long moment there was silence. Then he sighed, running a hand through his hair. I didn't want you to find out like this, he said, his voice low. I never wanted to hurt you, Sarah. But Sarah wasn't listening anymore. The damage was done. You have no idea what you've done, Alex. How could you do this to me? To us? She asked, tears filling her eyes. The conversation with Alex was emotionally draining, but it was necessary. Sarah knew their marriage was over. The trust had been shattered beyond repair. Alex apologized, but it was too late. Sarah had made up her mind. She filed for divorce, seeking to protect herself and her children from the toxicity that had poisoned their lives. Alex's remorse seemed hollow, and Em's apologies couldn't undo the hurt. In the weeks that followed, Sarah focused on rebuilding her life. She leaned on her friends, her children, and even Em, though their relationship would never be the same. She didn't want to lose her sister, but she couldn't ignore the betrayal that had been so deeply embedded in their family. As Sarah moved forward with her life, she found solace in the quiet moments. She spent more time with her children, nurturing the love they had always shared. She took up hobbies she had once neglected, rediscovered her love for painting, and even began to travel again. Her relationship with Em remained strained, but they slowly began to rebuild their bond, one step at a time. Sarah knew that healing would take time, but she was determined to emerge from the wreckage stronger than ever.